just like, you know, everyone to know that when we're recording, because it's nice to know that. And then I'm about to share my screen, and we're going to be looking at Coupa today. So I want to talk to you guys briefly about this. This is all going to be about items, right? So this is going to be about items, how you can see them, how they're built, the structure of items. And the reason we want to talk about this topic is because I know that many of you do multiple properties. And as buyers, we have very unique access in Coupa to allow us to see lots of things that are maybe not the same as our end users are seeing. And so over the last few weeks, we have definitely gotten some comments in terms of like, hey, what's going on? Like, I can see this, why can't my end user see this? I can see this, why can't this end user order it? So a lot of what we're going to discuss today is how items are created and how we segregate them by property to help you guys understand which of your users can see what, right? Because we all kind of do multiple properties, and like we can't, so like if Blackhawk buys a vodka from a supplier, I obviously can't have that item visible in Lake Charles, right? Because Lake Charles can't buy from the vodka supplier that Blackhawk buys from. So we have to make sure that visibility is by property to make it very user friendly for our end users. Now, as buyers and procurement folks, one of the things about the procurement role in Coupa is you're allowed to see lots of things that are not necessarily specific to your property. The reason that is because since we're all on one system now, we're all using the same item master, right? We're all using the same vendor master. We're all using a lot of the same tools. And so it helps us understand who else is using it, right? What vendors are available, what price they're paying. It helps us price check our own little world. So it's a great tool for a sourcing person to be able to see what other people are doing, right? It kind of does some of our job for us. We don't have to find 15 suppliers that we can buy one thing for. We can look it up. Who else did my other properties buy this from? So that's the reason that you guys have a little bit of a different visibility than your end users. And it's primarily to support you as a sourcing individual, okay? So in Coupa, we're going to talk about a couple things first today. The first thing is this little items tab, okay? So I want to be very clear. Your end users do not have access to the items tab. And the reason is because the items tab is basically the PNG Coupa item master, right? This is every item that we have set up, whether we use it or not, whether it's available in a catalog or not, whether it's available in multiple catalogs or one catalog or no catalogs or current or old or whatever. This is our item master, guys, of every catalog that we have ever set up to date. Okay, these are all the items. The reason our end users don't have access to this is, one, you may have noticed they did, right? They did. We took it away because it was causing lots of confusion. Because when you go in here, you're able to see things for all properties, right? And so for an end user who's only buying for one or two properties, that can be very confusing. And so we are going to show you guys today kind of the structure of these, how items are built, and kind of answer some questions in terms of why you can see things and why you can't see things, okay? So first, there's two sub-tabs here. One of them is items and one of them is supplier items. So an item is very simple to explain, right? The item tab is just the item. And so if you guys can see my video and my face, I really like to do a visual explanation of this because I think it kind of helps put some conceptual thought into practice. So in the items tab, this is the item. It's a rock, okay? It's a gray rock with black stripes on it. It's one, right? That's the item, okay? So this is the information that comes in the item tab. It's literally the commodity the unit of measure, the description of the item. That's the information you can find here. Supplier items, okay? In supplier items, not only will you find the description, okay, because I'm still buying a rock with black stripes on it, and I'm buying one at a time. Supplier items also tells me who I'm buying it from and what it costs, okay? So in this case, the rock that I am holding, I would get from a vendor called Home Depot, and it would cost me 32 cents. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of what information you're getting. So to kind of further explain supplier items, to have a supplier item, an item needs to exist first, right? Because you can't build a price in a supplier if you don't have an item with item information. Now, just because you find an item does not mean that you will see it under supplier items. Maybe we don't buy it anymore. Maybe there's not an active catalog for it. So there's not a supplier and a price to assign right now. Okay, so that's some additional information about these two tabs and kind of how they're used. So when I come into, so anytime you're looking at supplier item or item, doesn't matter, you can see the item itself as a link, right? So I can see this item is a link, I can click on it. In either screen, clicking on the item will take you to the same place, okay? So I'm actually gonna look up a specific water so we can look today. And so if I'm looking at all the items that contain water, right? How do I tell, like, what is my properties? Like, can I search that? How do I tell? Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm basically going to say there's not a good way or a consistent way from this screen to be able to just filter everything for your property, unfortunately. And the reason behind that is because some of the items that are available to your property are corporate contracts, and they're managed corporately by commodity managers or regionals like myself. And then some of them are going to be local, and the naming convention on the backing documents for these is a little bit different based on who has access to it. So there's not a really good way to search. However, if I click on the item itself, okay, so I'm going to click on the item itself, and it's going to take me into the detail of the item. So I'm going to be able to see the item info right here. So this is the information right here on top that comes from the items tab. Okay, so it's a description, manufacturer information, pack size information, the purchase unit of measure, all that stuff is the base of creation of this item. When I get into inventory attributes, is also from this screen, this item screen, whether it can be inventoried or not. If this information is filled out, it can be inventoried. If this information is blank, it has to be completed before it can be inventoried. That's an e-procurement rule. I just want you guys to know about it, okay? Now, as I scroll down, you can see here at the bottom, suppliers. This is where Coupa takes the supplier info and plunks it, okay? So you can see, here's my supplier information, and this is available at lots of different suppliers. So what this tells me is this item is on multiple different catalogs, okay? And potentially is accessible to multiple different people. So as you can see, this item is stocked in Blackhawk in the warehouse, and it's purchased from Swire Pacific Holdings in one location. It's stocked in Vicksburg. It's purchased from Clark. It's purchased from Chesterman. And look how many pages are here, okay? There's a lot of suppliers that we're buying this Dasani water from, okay? So you can see Heartland, Chesterman, Clark Group, lots of different things to tell us that it's being purchased potentially in lots of different places. So how can I tell if this supplier or this item is purchasable at my property? Really good question. So the first thing I would search is my supplier here? Okay, so that's a really good place to start. Is the supplier I want to buy from listed in this page? The next place I can start is, let's say this is my supplier. Abarta, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, Coca-Cola beverages. So if this is my supplier, how do I tell, can my end user see this? Is this available for us? The way we do that is by looking at the contract it's attached to. Okay, so I'm going to copy this information because this is important. I'm going to go to the top page. I'm going to open the suppliers tab in another tab up here. I'm going to go to contracts and I'm basically just going to paste. I'm going to make sure my view is set on all. And I am going to paste the name in my search bar and hit the search field. What's going to happen is it's going to bring up my contract. Now, the content group is what I want to focus on. Okay, so content group basically tells me who can see it. Okay, so content groups are by property and by warehouse. That's it. If there's multiple content groups here, then multiple properties can see the item on the same contract. Where that's applicable is like national agreements. So if we're all buying coffee from Courtesy Products and it's not stocked in any of our warehouses, then we can all use the same contract and the same catalog item to buy from. And we would just add multiple properties here. Each property is named accordingly. So your 4-alpha abbreviation will kind of give you an idea of who can see this. And then if you ever see warehouse here, so in this case, it's PNRC warehouse. This means that only the warehouse can order from this catalog, meaning that this is probably stocked in the PNRC warehouse. Okay. So if I were to go back to the water, I could literally check each one of these contracts and say, hey, who can buy from this contract? Like who can use this contract? So I can see this is a Vicksburg warehouse. So this is stocked in Vicksburg's warehouse as well. So that is how you can look at an item, tell what contracts it's attached to, and tell which property can buy from that contract. So the reason warehouses have different contracts. So we break out contracts direct and warehouse. The warehouse ones are content grouped to warehouse content groups to stop our end users from buying direct when they should be buying from our warehouse. So that's how we have Coupa set up. If we're going to stock something in the warehouse, then that is where your end users buy it from. If it's not stocked in the warehouse, then it's content grouped for everyone on property and they can buy it direct from the supplier. So that is how content groups work and how they affect item visibility. So some of you may be like, Nikki, you're crazy. I have to do this every single time. Not every single time, but this is a good methodology to get used to when you are looking at items and seeing if they're visible on your property or not, if they're being used by others, how they're being used by others. I do have a kind of simple way to see what your end users see. So let's say I'm going to pretend I'm Kim Woods today, and I work at Aurora and Joliet in Illinois. And so what if I just want to search a word and see if my end users can see it too, right? That's maybe I just want to do a simple search and see if they can see it. The way I would do that is I would come to my homepage. I would go to the content group. I would select, so I have access to all content groups. This will show you what content groups you have access to. I am going to select my Joliet content group. Now, This should not remain selected at all times. Please do not think that this is going, it's not going to filter these other tabs. It's not going to filter items. The only time this button is useful is when you're performing the action I'm about to show you. As soon as you're done performing this action, you need to put it back to all, because it affects all kinds of things and it stops you from seeing things, and it shouldn't be used all the time. But for this exercise, this is what I'm going to show you guys how to do. When I change the content group and I type in this field and hit enter, it's going to show me items that contain water that people in Joliet have the ability to order. Okay, so this is a really good way for those of you that are doing multiple properties or helping at another property or something like that. This is a really good way for you to immediately see what items are available in Joliet or whatever property you're doing. Joliet's just the example we're using. Okay. Now, I do want to show you guys, while I have this content group, I don't have the ability to order or use the catalog feature. So again, this filter stops you from being able to use some really basic Coupa functionality, but just keep in mind, this is a really easy way to use the what do you need field to find out what your properties can see versus what you can see. Okay. So that is how items work, how they're set up, how visibility works, and tips and tricks that I use to quickly tell me what my end users can see versus what I can see. So I'm going to stop recording and we are going to get into Q&A.